This really kept me on my toes. Whenever I thought it was going to zig, it zagged. So, Joseph, I feel like you resisted every temptation to be obvious.
Mm.
How often did you have to box yourself when writing this to turn your cheek away from what is expected and telling something that's fresh and a little ambiguous but meaningful?
That's a great observation. Well, one thing that was great is I had my co-collaborator on the story with me to always be talking about bouncing ideas off of. And one thing that we always talked about, I mean, we wanted it to be relentless. We wanted it to be this ride, this cathartic ride. And one thing that I always talked about, and I say it over and over again, and it's a quote from Alexander McKendrick, but that the film has to be unpredictable but inevitable. And for me, learning off of my first film and just as I'm growing as a filmmaker, I think whenever the audience starts to get ahead of you, whenever the audience knows where you're gonna go, they check out, and for this film, particularly because we wanted to take all the themes that it's touching on of the pain and the loss and the regret and put it just on the shoulders of this one character and kind of just be ripped through the story, just with her in every single scene. It was always kind of the construction of the film, and also being an independent film with not, it's not like we had millions and millions of dollars, so it was also intentional in the sense that we needed it to be tight, a tight 80-minute ride that we can also execute a certain way, if that makes sense. So always having that producerial hat on as well. And then, yeah, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Kaylee, your work here is truly impressive. I feel like you have such control with your intensity. But one of the things that stood out to me in watching this is the film's moments, these moments of quiet intensity. As an actor here, do you prefer the creative room you have with a quiet scene, or do you like flexing your character's intensity and emotions through verbal language?
Good question.
That's a great question. Actually, this is new territory to me. And,
Mhm.
I've been told it's a lot harder to do the latter. It's a lot harder to be silent, but being convincing that they know every thought in your head. So I'm usually the person that if you say I can't do anything, okay, give me a minute so I can prove you wrong. And
Mhm.
I feel as though because I'm so physically sound and I'm an athlete, I prefer to be silent and have the audience know exactly what I'm thinking without saying a word. And especially with this character, that was her nature. She can write probably on one page everything that she verbally said, but she was saying something every second of that film, and it was all over her face, how she walked, how she talked, how she didn't talk. So especially with Joseph being able to explain to me in this very early on that this character has to feel so much, and like through her eyes, through things that she doesn't say. So we agreed that this character needed to be built not for her verbal language, but just by her body language and everything that was written all over her face. So I definitely prefer that.
Yeah. Well, it was really well done, but there's some great moments of powerful spoken language here, and the one that probably sticks out in my mind the most is when your character visits her mom at one of her help meetings, and in that scene, you say something like, "Mom, you're over here praising and grieving over other people's loved ones, but you won't look at your daughter right here in front of you." And that's one of those lines that really does a number. It got me thinking about the advice that I maybe give people, but I'm guilty of not really following myself, which says a lot about living your most authentic life. Did that line have any emotional journey for you both, Joseph for writing it, and then you for speaking it? Does it set in the mind and take you on some interesting journeys?
Yeah, I mean that whole scene was that was a brutal shoot day, but a cathartic one. And as I said, this character has a lot of similarities taken from my real life. So that actually was not written down. That was in the moment,
Mm,
being
Mm.
like reacting and responding to the great work and what Kimberly, the actress, was giving me. And he let us work. And that's where that came from, really just immersing myself in the character and what she was feeling, what she may be feeling in front of her mother that doesn't accept her, probably blames her for her sister being missing, buries her problems in other people by trying to help other people. So we were very much immersed in that entire scene. And it was just something that kind of came to, especially knowing the character and me and Kimberly just going back and forth. And it worked. It was one of those takes that after it was cut, I'm like, what did I just say? Because I was so, you know what I mean?
Yeah. But, to her credit also, like, I've worked with some extremely, seasoned and really amazing actors. I do a lot of television work, so I've directed a lot of amazing people. And you came in on that day looking at the wall, and then I've seen a lot of great actors do this. They just kind of feel the environment, and you're like, well, she's helping all these people, but what about me? I'm her own. And then we have written, I mean, there has been many renditions of this scene, and poor Kaylee, I've made her like rehearse it a gajillion times. And then we rewrite it and try. But I knew, like, once we had Kimberly cast and once we were in that room, the dialogue and the lines, it's a guide, but I also knew that I just needed them to kind of, just kind of push each other a little bit, and I think Kaylee was a natural in understanding that, it's about being present in the moment, reacting, and I think we did pretty good with the scene.
That scene is crazy.
It was a tough shoot day. It was but what's interesting is a lot of people who've watched the film, like that scene, because that's kind of the last scene before we smash on the gas pedal and you're just in this, taking on this really crazy journey. So I think that film is placed in a very specific moment and very, very pivotal for the heartbeat of the film, because you see and understand the guilt and sort of self-shame that she's putting on herself there, and you empathize with her for a moment, and then she's watching the video of her sister one more time, and then she's picked up,
Yeah. Well, Kaylee, great job with that. It's worthy of like stitching on a pillow. It has such meaning and encapsulates this film
it was
pretty
great.
remarkably.
You learn off the top.
Thank you. The boxer reflexes, I guess, acting.
Yeah. So that's one of the many moments of stinging humanity that I noticed, and you both are gifted at making micro moments feel macro, because it all truly gets at the core of humanity as a whole. How did you kind of touch on this a little bit, but how did this project impact your thinking? How does this particular story and its themes deepen your understanding of what it means to be human?
That's a loaded question. I mean,
yeah, it's pretty lofty. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's a good question, but I was learning on the job. So the first day versus the last day of shooting, learning about my character and the other characters, you kind of get lost in it, and it's understanding humanity. You'll spend a whole lifetime. That's what we do as humans. We try to understand each other for a whole lifetime, but it's people and humans are a lot deeper and darker than you would like to admit. Put it that way. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's the whole, I mean, there's just so much, but I would say spending a lot of time with Kaylee, and going to different events with her, going to her fights, meeting people from her tribe, all these things, I think, and just learning more, she really pushed me to kind of think about some of the themes more, and like how deep-seated this stuff goes into our history, and there's a lot of different, obviously right now in this country, people have a lot of different feelings about that, but I feel like, to be empathetic moving forward, we need to understand what we did in the past. That's just my opinion, that's my point of view on it. I'm not saying if it's right or wrong. So for me, it was just an educational experience learning that, and then also learning, selfishly learning a lot about boxing, because I became obsessed with boxing, and now whenever there's a fight, I'm always texting Kayla like, who you got? Jake Paul gonna win this? No, not Jake Paul, but so yeah, so it's just, I mean, making movies is it's such a human. It's a human thing where you deal with so many different people and so many different personalities with your actors, with your crew and everything, and you grow and learn, and I'm just grateful to have been able to go on that journey and enjoy the process of this one. And I'm already a different filmmaker. We shot this in 2019, so
Mm.
But all the stuff that I learned from it is now, you know, part of the tool set, and hopefully I can use it moving forward, you know.
Yeah. So what sort of conversations were you having with all your actors, like even Kevin Dunn, who has a small part, but you make them, each character, feel completely fleshed out in the
Yeah.
little screen time, and it, because when I'm watching it, I'm feeling like, oh man, I know exactly what kind of person this is, and it's not because I've seen this character before, but because of how Kaylee reacts to them, or the way that you shoot it. There's just like,
Yeah,
there's something about him that I understand.
yeah. I mean, I'm really glad you mentioned that. I mean, not a lot of people ask us about that. And I think that that's a really important thing to understand also, in terms of, you know, Kaylee is an unknown. She's a world famous world champion boxer, but you know, we still needed to have some strong supporting people around her. And you need that to help the ball get rolling and people to start, you know, getting eyes on the project, and maybe giving you money, all this stuff. So really, I have to first give a shout out to Daniel Henshaw, who plays Bobby in the film, who is now a really, really good friend of mine. But, you know, really, like, it was hard to find someone to play that part. And I don't know if you've seen any of his other work. There's this movie, Snowtown Murders, Australian film, that's like, it's one of the greatest performances I've ever seen. But by chance, through a friend who, I live in Brooklyn and he lives in Greenpoint. So like, we just met up, and it was another collaboration, different than Kaylee, but he was just so giving and willing to come on board. And once he came on board, you know, there's a energy that changes with the project. And then Kevin Dunn comes on board, and then Lisa Emery and Tiffany Chu, all these people who are amazing actors. And we need these, because, you know, there's not a lot of money. I'll just say that bluntly. So it's not like they need it for the money, but we need these great actors to do these small independent films for them to get made, and for them to come on board, to trust us, and just show up, you know, because they're just coming for a couple days, shoot the film and go. I'm just very, very, very grateful. So I want to give a lot of love to all the supporting actors that were in the film. The film would not have been made without them. And in terms of each character and each scene, you know, these are very seasoned actors, you know what I mean? So it's just you know, we didn't rehearse or anything, you know, it's just like they fly, you know, maybe we have like a phone conversation about the character, but then we're on set and we're doing it, you know? And luckily, from my experience directing a lot of television, I'm prepared, I'm used to that now, because you don't really know the actors before you show up on a set and shoot a television show. So there's a way of working with them that I think I learned from that. And then I got to give a lot of props to Kaylee, because I just threw her, here you go, Kevin Dunn. You're sitting in front of Kevin Dunn, but she was just fearless. It just didn't matter. It didn't matter, you know what I mean? Whereas some people, that might get in your head. And I think that's a testament to one, the trust that we built with each other, but also I think being a fighter and just being present and being in the moment, you know, it's a similar parallel.
Right. And before we run out of time here, I have to comment on how your ability, Joseph, on that. I have to admit that I got some Heat vibes, like the Michael Mann film. Like when you said earlier about pressing on the gas pedal, like that's exactly what I was feeling as Kaylee's going into this dark world to find her sister. That the music and how it's cut, it's intense. There's an art to properly building a momentum like that. So I'm curious what you plugged into to get to that level. And then Kaylee, for you, did you have to plug into something? Do you listen to music? What's your process of like getting into the headspace?
Well, especially for being my first time in such a tough role, you know, Joseph brought me as far as he could to give me his knowledge of the whole, you know, being on set and the characters and how acting is. And another thing I noticed too is that, you know, a lot of people have this misconception that actors are good liars, where it's the latter. It's that we're really feeling those emotions. It's my job to convince you that I'm really feeling those emotions. So right before shooting, he hooked me up with a goddess of a woman, my acting coach now still, but Sheila Gray. and it was like a week boot camp. He threw me to the wolves, but she had kind of fine-tuned everything and really helped me to be able to plug in and plug out. I love music. Music is just kind of, depends on what day and what mood I'm in. So she kind of gave me a step-by-step how to prep and how to really dive into what I needed to dive into. And I talk a lot about choices. If I chose to work on something one day, it may not be what I work on the next day. It might be the same emotion, but there's different things, and it just really has to do with being present. So I really got to give props to Sheila for breaking down in such a short amount of time and having me be able to understand the instrument and when and how to use it.
No, and for me, I'll just say that well, first of all, I'll take that compliment. I have a revolving list of top 10 films that changes every day, but Heat's usually on there. So one of my absolute all-time favorite films, Michael Mann is a legend. And ironically, I was just shooting a television show in Japan. I was directing some episodes and he directed the pilot. So, it's just funny how that a couple of people have made a reference to that. And but I'll take it. That's all great to me. But yeah, I mean, working with my department heads, working with my cinematographer, and really just figuring out as we're going through pre-production, just embracing where we are, the locations, and just building the tone of the film, like scene by scene by scene, location by location by location. How do we want it to feel? How do we want it to look? What is the color? What colors and why, and hoping that you kind of just consistently do that across the board. And then when you have a finished film, hopefully the tone is all there, because I think, when I was in film school and I think when a lot of filmmakers are starting out, you struggle with having a consistent tone, and obviously I'm Japanese, so I'm extremely hard on this film and on myself and on my own work. But the one thing that I am proud of is whether you like it or not, I do think the film has a very specific tone and vibe that goes all the way through. It might not be for everyone, but it's there. And I think as the director, that's your job.
Right. Yeah. Well, this was really special. I'm just really excited by this film. As you probably heard, my dogs, they're excited too. So I thank you so much for your time. I really can't wait to see where you both go from here and how this may expand your creativity, but this was really great. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your
great
conversation.
questions.
Absolutely.
Really great questions. Thank you, man.
All right. Take care, guys.
Yeah.
Bye.